Hey guys, so I'm kind of on a roll with TVZ. I've been practicing it a lot this week as well. So the next game we're going to be taking a look at is Kane versus Empire Kas. Kas, he retired. He's back from the dead because Widowmines got buffed against Protoss. It's all good now. So we're seeing someone back from the dead versus Kane, most notably the number one Grandmaster on NA. We'll see if he lives up to that name or not. I believe, spoiler alert, Cass does win, so I guess not. But we'll take a look at how a European Terran gets to play a best of three against one of America's top Zergs. One of North America's top Zergs. I believe Kane is from Canada. Not too sure about that though. Kane is a very solid player. He is always at the top of the ladder, yet he doesn't achieve significant results outside of ladder and his practice schedule. So that's kind of an interesting thing to look upon on his play, to maybe see why he doesn't perform as well as other top level Zergs do in tournaments in general. And like, this was one of his chances to really gain some more fame and notoriety in the scene, and since I believe he loses this. I believe he does. My memory's not 100% though. But like, I guess it just reflects on Kane's preparation that went into not only this matchup but into the tournament as a whole. Like, maybe he was more concerned with playing against other players, or like just like other bigger names, like maybe some Korean, one of the Korean Protosses like Stardust, or someone like that in a later stage. I don't know. I'm just trying to make up a reason, but they're not really good. Not good at all. Frost is a good map for a gasless expand because it's very difficult for Reapers to jump on up there, and because of the map size and a 4-player map, Terrans also are more likely to go 14cc because it has a possibility of going unscouted, and it's very hard to punish on a map this size. So Kane, he's kind of just playing really safe. He doesn't necessarily need the early Zergling speed. He could have even delayed it slightly in favor of getting out a faster third hatch, because his Overlord did scout. His Overlord did scout the 14cc going down. But no, he's playing a very standard game. He hasn't cut any corners in responses to Cass's play. And it looks like Cass, or Cass, I'm just going to call him Cass because it sounds more European. It looks like Cass is going for a Hellion Banshee play, and Hellion Banshee is a very, very strong opener. It's not the most economical opener because it basically puts a lot of your money into a big army, and basically nothing can beat Hellion Banshee. You need a bunch of speedlings and queens, and you need spores and a spine crawler. So we'll see if Kane gets any of that, and if he in fact scouts for, okay, there's the Overlord over there, so he definitely sees it, and he sees a second tech lab on the racks, so he knows that Koss is going for a Cloak Banshee opener into bio. There's not going to be any mech play going on, and he sees the third command center as well, so this isn't meant to do damage, or like do game ending damage, and it's not meant to go into mech as well. It's only meant to deny creep and force the Zerg player to make a lot of defense. We can already see 3 spores going up for Kane. You can't mess around as a Zerg player against Banshees. You need at least one spore at each base for detection. And Koss is still able to get 3 drones off because of the close air positions between both players' natural bases, so that's pretty cool. And let's see. He has 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 2, 4, 6. Yeah, it looks like he's made 8 Hellions to go along with this Hellion, or with this Banshee composition, which is it's not a bad choice because 6 Hellions kind of gets overwhelmed by Lings, but if you have 8 Hellions, it forces the Zerg player to make an even larger amount of Lings so that they don't roll over and die versus Hellions, because 8 Hellions do a very good job at kiting Zerglings. They just roast really fast. And as we can see here, Kane, he's got his spine crawler. I mean his spore. He didn't get any spine crawlers because he saw the command center. He saw that bio was happening, so that Koss was not going to be making any more Hellions. And he does have all of his spore crawlers. He's getting an overseer. This is kind of bad by him. He didn't necessarily need to move out of range of the spores because there was nothing in range for the banshees to shoot. He could have just waited for the overseer. So a bit of a lack of discipline on Kane's part, and he was forced to use a couple energies which could have been used in respreading that creep. And it looks like this Hellion Banshee did accomplish its goal. There are like very few creep tumors going on. Kane isn't even spreading any creep right now. He's going directly into Spire. That's kind of what Hellion Banshee forces. It forces a Zerg player to get into Spire to shut down that Banshee harass. And Kane hasn't been able to take a third base or a fourth base either. And his creep spread is kind of non-existent, where otherwise he would be trying to edge out towards the watchtower at this point in the game. So things are looking pretty good for our Terran player. And Koss opts to take the more defensive third base. On these positions, though, it's not really bad to take this base at all, because then you can do a parade push from this third to that third. So that's just something to keep in mind. This being a 4-player map, there are lots of different positions that you can spawn in, and as a result, there are a lot of different scenarios in which you can achieve your game plan, because there's so many paths that go all over the map. It's just a very crazy map, and it breeds a lot of different types of strategies that are available that can be used successfully on this map. Kane, his creep spread kind of resumed. I don't like this with the slow queens, and he still ends up having to cancel that fourth base. So these banshees have already done a very, very good job. And Kane's queens are just like running around like bimbos trying to corner these banshees down. He's not even really zoning out this banshee play, because he only really needs like 3 queens to kill the banshees, because they all have a bunch of transfusions on them. And back at the fourth base before it got cancelled, if he had like 3 queens there and then split off 3 more to go into the main / natural area, which is the logical step for these banshees to go in or to go to next after the fourth, then he would have been able to deal with it a lot faster. But Mutalisks are out now, and that's gonna shut down any banshee play. Koss already has 2 turrets. I like having 2 turrets here because this is close air position, so it's a lot easier for the Mutalisks to come and snipe the turret and then do some damage. And you don't want to be forced out of position as a Terran. Koss has the mini-map here, and if Mutalisks came, he would be forced to come back really, really fast and lose his watchtower positioning. And now, these 2 turrets wouldn't really be necessary if Koss had gotten that third base and did a parade push over here, because it would cover both this area and that area. Like, you can't send Mutalisks over here if your main army's over here. Now, interesting enough, we see that Koss is going for siege tank play. I believe that's his 2nd siege tank that he's building this game. Very, very interesting. I wonder what he's going to be doing with these siege tanks. I think he's just going to be doing a large push, kind of like Wings of Liberty style. I don't really like this play particularly, and other top-level Koreans tend to agree, besides Bomber, who uses it once in a blue moon. But siege tanks just die to Mutalisks way too fast now. Once you get a clump of Mutalisks that can one-shot siege tanks, it's too easy to outmaneuver Marines, and money really can be better spent using Thors. But Koss is going all out on these siege tanks, so we'll see how this works out for him. Now he's taken the watchtower. It's very important on this map to secure the enemy's watchtower, or the Zerg's watchtower in this case, and to maintain this position, because if the Zerg doesn't take this base and he instead takes this base, by having the watchtower you force his army to be over here, and it kind of cuts off this potential base that the Zerg can take. And Kane's going to either have to take it as his 4th base and not take this base, or take it as his 5th base if he chooses to take the close base. That can be very, very easily parade pushed through the corridor of death. It's kind of strange. We don't see Koss clearing the creep at all. He's just sitting there with siege tanks, kind of like he wants to force a fight to happen. And the queens, very good play by Kane's part, using them to tank some damage, because he has an absorbent amount of queen energy. I don't think he's not the best creep spreader, as we can see. His creep spread is kind of negligent, even though Koss had done minimal damage to it. All he did was prevent Kane from kind of spreading it, but as soon as the Cloak Banshees were dealt with, he should have aggressively started spreading it more. We can also see that the number of creep tumors is very, very thin as well, so he's not putting the hardest effort into spreading creep. And this push, it's just going to be cleaned up really, really easily. And that was just kind of a free donation on Koss's part. It was definitely a mistake to be there, unless Koss had thought that maybe his Hellion Banshee did a lot more damage than he actually thought it did, which I highly doubt. Or that Kane is just not the player that's going to macro perfectly or something. Like, it's just not, it's not a good, it wasn't good for Koss to be there in the first place. I mean, Kane did overextend right there because he just got an insane engagement off, but the defensive siege tanks did their job in killing banelings and the mutalisks, or not mutalisks, the zerglings. Wow, these queens. Are they really gonna die? Okay, they don't die, but they got close to dying. Almost could have been a catastrophe for Kane, losing 5 creep spreading queens. So now we see his creep spread a lot better. It's a lot more pushed out. It's approaching this watchtower that's on Koss's part of the map. If he wants to take a 5th base, he's going to take this base, and he's going to have, in order to secure this base and this area of the map, you want to have this watchtower. And the same goes for this side of the map. If you want to secure bases on this side of the map, you also want this watchtower as well. And I don't know what Koss is exactly doing. I think he's pushing like this because he knows that Kane just donated a portion of his army and overextended, and Koss basically lost nothing. Alright, so he just cleared the creep. He could have done that a couple minutes earlier when his army was at a more favorable position. And now we see these mutalisks coming in, and they're going to do some damage. Those 2 turrets are okay, but okay. It was enough to force Kane back, so that was good on his part. And it looks like Kane is not choosing to get a very big mutalisk flock, and instead he is going for a faster hive army. So against a faster hive army, siege tanks aren't the worst possible thing to do. I mean, they still aren't as effective as Thor's in this matchup, but they do better against Ultralisk, Baneling, and Fester than versus Mass Muta Baneling. And this creep spread, it's back on track. Koss just not messing around with the Mutalisks. He thinks that Kane is getting a lot more Mutalisks than he actually is, but Kane's actually, he doesn't have that big of an investment in Mutalisks, and he's actually getting Infestation Pit, Hive, he's going to be getting Ultra Tech. So that's a lot of money that's not going to be going into Mutalisks. So if we look at Koss's maxed out army, he has 8 Medivacs, he has 71 Marines, 5 Marauders, and 7 Siege Tanks against 24 Mutalisks. That's a decent sized Mutaflock, but it's nothing huge like 30 plus Mutalisks, 78 Zerglings, and 23 Banelings. I would give this advantage to Kane just because he has a better army composition. That's a lot of Marines, but until all the Banelings die, which is not likely to happen if you engage from a flank or if you engage on creep. Ooh, that's sucky. That's sucky, losing a queen like that. Kane has way too much energy on those queens though. They could have been spreading creep past the watchtower over here, but he was just focused on spreading creep towards the Terran's base. Like, this area is good, but it's only 1 out of 3 pathways, even 4. I mean, an argument can be made that creep spread would be beneficial for this area to reinforce this base faster as well. So Kane's creep spread just really, really bad. Really, really bad. Not Korean level creep spread here. Now Kas, once again, he's getting really aggressive, and he's on the creep spread, and I have to question that. And he's also making 2 more factories, so he does definitely have a interesting transition. But there's just so many Mutalisks. What Kane should really be doing, he shouldn't be fighting those Marines. He should be going around and sniping siege tanks. Kas there's this open area space right there, dead air, where Kane can camp his Mutalisks and snipe siege tanks. And it's gonna force Kas to stim part of his army over there, and then Kane can go in through the front when not all of Kas's bioforce is there to stop it. But Kane was just really attacking Marines, not the best decision. And then kind of loses a bunch of units for free. I think they were baited in by the siege tank fire, and Kane wasn't paying attention. And then again, he's just moving away. He's not even using the Mutalisks to really clean up these siege tanks. Like, he's afraid of like Thors or Widow Mines buried here, but there aren't any. So it's really, really bad big fights. I think Kane just doesn't know how to deal with siege tanks, and I think his response to that is to get a lot of Ultralisks, which is not really the correct response. And Kas wasn't... yeah, so far I'm not really that impressed by the level of gameplay going on here. Both players are playing very well, but they're using inefficient styles to play against each other. And this counterattack happened because Kas's entire army is over here. He moved all the way there. You don't want to give up this area because then counterattacks can happen. What you want to do is camp your army near the watchtower, and like I said earlier, you split the map in half, and you prevent the Zerg from being able to use this side of the map, so you can just freely send out like medevacs and do free drop damage to it, and the Zerg can't really defend that because you have a great defensive point with vision set up at the watchtower, which Kas has decidedly given up, and which allows this counterattack to go through as well. And a sensor tower also wouldn't be the worst thing either to protect this corridor, but it's like both players have completely forgotten about that area of the map. They're not utilizing it to their advantage. Now it looks like we're going for a base trade scenario. I'm not really too happy about this because Kane was trying to switch into Ultralisks, and if he's doing a base trade right now, so why is he making Ultralisks? He's made 2 Ultralisks after he's gotten into Kas's main base, so it's kind of questionable. 3 Ultralisks when the best unit, in fact, to deal with a base race is a Mutalisk. Why would you get an Ultralisk? So it's not the best play from Kane, but it is good enough to possibly defeat to defeat Kas. We'll actually see how this ends up going, because it's still a relatively close game. But, oh! Wow. I think that's game right there. Like, if he had a bunch of Mutalisks, if he had like 30 Mutalisks instead of just those useless Ultras that die to siege tanks, he would have been able to wipe this entire force up. And now, like, he's making Mutalisks, but it's too little too late. He has no production, and it looks like he's going to lose this game as well. He just has no units left on the map. Yep. Kaldor agrees with me, and now Kas is up 1-0, and the second map is going to be Yonsu. So, that game on Frost Kane didn't really bring his A game. There was a lot of small things that he kind of messed up on, and it's either a lack of practice or just not being good enough to play at the level that Korean players like Jaedong play at. Like, you wouldn't see those kinds of mistakes from really any Korean Zergs in GSL Code S. You might see them if they're like B-teamers in Pro League, and they don't really have a lot of experience. They're new to the game. They still have to prove themselves. Kane has been around for a while, and he's kind of stagnated at the top of the ladder, which isn't a bad place to be, but he also hasn't achieved more results, and that's a result of just small things in his play style that can lead to losing games against potentially players that can normally be outclassed in other ways. So I believe on this map, Koss goes for 3 Reapers, and as we saw with Happy versus Jaedong, I think, or I did, it didn't happen in that game, but I did touch upon it, that sometimes Zergs opt to go for a 15 pool, so because the 3 Reaper harass is so common on this map, and it is so good because it's a decent Reaper map. So I think this is the game where Koss goes for 3 Reapers. Now, Koss's play, we'll talk about that because this is actually supposed to be a Terran web series. The Terran analyst desk at Vasacast Invitational somewhere in the internet. Oh, let me just make sure I'm recording because okay, good. I'd really hate for this entire thing to be lost. It freaks me out because it's already happened once. Alright, so everything's good so far. Oh yeah, so back to Koss's play. His play wasn't bad, but he didn't win because his play was better than Kane's. He won because Kane kind of made some mistakes. He didn't make the best decisions possible to win that game. And as a result, Koss's play was just able to beat Kane's. Even though Koss was kind of going for not the most efficient unit composition. I mean, those siege tanks, if they were dealt with properly with the Mutalisks, then Kane would have easily won the game by clearing up Koss's army in some big main engagements. But Kane really didn't execute those big engagements with the siege tanks as well as one might think. So I would, I guess, attribute it to lack of practice versus siege tanks, and he seems to be a more defensive player, so that he would rather not try to pick off siege tanks with the Mutalisks and instead try to get Ultralisks and get hive units that are more cost effective against this kind of ground army and that can deal with it. I guess that's his reasoning. I mean, it's not a bad reasoning, it's just not the best reasoning possible. And to get the best reasoning as possible, you just look at Korean pro gamers who have spent hours and hundreds of games running the same build over and over to fix all these little kinks in their gameplay, so that these kinds of small things don't have to be answered on your own, but are already answered for you, and you just have to observe and pay attention to what other people's results are. It's like, why do a science experiment on your own when you can just read the science experiment someone else did of the same thing that you're gonna do? It would be able to. It just gives you a lot more solid work and a lot of work being done for you rather than figuring it out by yourself. And these 3 Reapers, this is why some players go for pool first. Kane did a decent job at holding it. He's only lost a handful of lings, and he's only lost a couple drones, so not the worst damage dealt. Koss kind of overextended himself. His Reapers could have been run down, but he does luckily get them out in time. So I guess it was a good thing on Koss's part to stay till the last possible second. Kane's taking a interesting third base. Normally Zergs would take this third base because you can have the watchtower and creep up to the watchtower to defend against it. And then you can take this 4th base, and by the time you take it, there's going to be creep spread all the way outside of those rocks. But Kane's deciding to take that base first. Probably because he doesn't like it when Terran players camp up on this watchtower and then attack that 3rd base, maybe. I don't really... once again, it's not the normal base patterns that most Zergs do on this map, so I guess Kane just has a reason for doing it that isn't the same as better Zergs than him, and I say that in the nicest way possible as well. I do realize I might be coming off a bit harsh, but these players are only foreign players, to be fair. They don't have, Cost right there, losing those Hellions and Reapers. I talked right through that, but I do not want to let this point go unnoticed. Because they're like, when you have your Reapers and Hellions there, there is no good reason why they should be there when you have scouted speed and when you have scouted speedlings as well. Like, it's basically banking on the fact that it's taking a risk and banking on the fact that the Zerg player is trying to be greedy and force out a bunch of drones. But that's not. It's kind of like as close as coin flip as you can get in this matchup. Like, so Koss, he clears out that, and he sees like a good amount of Zerglings. So if Kane made more Zerglings right now, which he is doing, then Koss is gonna get surrounded. And what do we see him doing? We see him trying to pick off a queen. He backs up, which is good, but then he just stays on creep again, which is understandable because this queen looks very juicy. But he should have realized that he was on creep for a very long time, and he was showing his force as well, and his internal timer wasn't properly adjusted. So Kane's reinforcements just gonna clean this up for a relatively low cost. So it was a very good trade on Kane's part, and he doesn't even get the Reapers out as well. Like, Koss gets some Zerglings for retribution, but really that was a large portion of his map control that he lost, and he has 3 command centers, so now his 3rd command center is going to be delayed when he lands it. And again, Koss is, I believe he expands towards this 3rd base rather than this base. So what that tells us is that he is not a fan of playing aggressive parade push styles, and he's more of a fan of being very defensive and I guess just being a defensive, solid macro player that plays very defensively. And that's not a bad thing, but it can also be a weakness when that's all you do as well. And that's how, and when you base too much of your gameplay on it, so that you are in fact predictable. So the better player, if they had studied Koss before, they would recognize that this is his kind of a style, and they would find ways to abuse it. So this 3rd command center should have landed at either 3rd base by now. Okay, so now it's going up. But if those 3 Hellions and 3 Reapers hadn't died, then he would have been able to have the 3rd base down and mining right now. So that was just not a good blunder on Koss's part. And we see 2 Widow Mines out. I believe he makes 2. Okay, so he has 1 Widow Mine over here, and he has another Widow Mine over here. So that's pretty cool play by Koss. He is using the Widow Mines to zone out potential run-by areas of the Zerg player. So I'll give him brownie points for that. That's good. And that was a result of a slight variation. He made, I believe, a total of like 8 Hellions, 7 to 8, and then he made 2 Widow Mines. And his variation in his build was that he didn't make a reactor on his factory very soon. He kept it on the current reactor, and then made an additional 2 Widow Mines and like 2 Hellions, and then switched it onto the starport instead of getting a reactor for the 2nd and 3rd racks, so that you'd have 5 Marine production as soon as possible. So now Kane has decided to take his 4th base, and I really wonder why he takes it there. Like, if he was taking this as his 3rd base, maybe he would at least recognize the fact that this edge right there is very easy to abuse. So if you were to take a 3rd base there, maybe spreading creep there, which isn't a strong point of Kane's, but spreading creep there might be a bit important to holding that 3rd base a bit easier. Looking at Koss's gameplay, he is playing a pretty normal game. He got 2 Widow Mines, and then he's starting Hellion production. Or Hellbat production. That's pretty normal, and that's what most Terran players are doing right now. They'll either get a couple Widow Mines and go straight into Hellbat Thor, or they'll just go straight into Hellbat Thor even. But that's a lot more rare, and usually only good if you have done a lot of damage to the Zerg player. That was a good Widow Mine shot right there. I think because Kane just didn't realize that Koss had 2 Widow Mines in really random places. Like, his build is kind of unorthodox like that. You normally wouldn't have 2 Widow Mines there so early in the game, but Koss did it anyways. Alright, so now we see that he's going to be on this side of the map, and his focus is going to be this third base, because he's clearing creep over here. He doesn't care that this base has creep to defend it. He cares that this base has creep to defend it, and that's why he's getting rid of the creep here. And it looks like he did make 2 more Widow Mines, so he made a total of 4 Widow Mines. There's still 2 over there, and then he put 2 over here. And then he started making Hellbats. Cool. So, this fight right here, he does some okay splitting, but his units do end up getting cleaned up. So, I wouldn't say it's a really great trade for him, even though the supplies say otherwise. And Kane, I don't think he realizes there's 2 Widow Mines there because he doesn't have an Overseer. That might be an Overseer coming by. No, that's not an Overseer. He has no idea the Widow Mines are still there even. So that's kind of just bad on Kane's part, not lacking the map awareness that other top level Zerg players would usually have. Like, normally we would have seen those 2 Widow Mines cleared up by now, and it's very important to kill the Widow Mine count, because Widow Mines plus Hellbats make it really hard to engage into where the Widow Mines are, and the Widow Mines help establish a forward rally point for the Terran player. And by killing those Widow Mines, like, he had a chance to kill it. There was no army here, now there's an army here, and the Widow Mines are still there. And by killing the Widow Mines, it destroys your forward rally point, so if you do lose an engagement as a Terran player and you don't have anything to fall back on, aka Widow Mines, then your entire army just dies. And that is what I call an overextension. So Kane, or Koss, not Kane, doing a good job clearing the creep up, and now he's going to start to abuse this ground. And Kane's creep, like, his creep spread could have started going around here. It could have started branching off to this area before, like, it's still far out before Koss started clearing it, but he's not really focusing his creep spread in order to benefit him. He's just kind of like blindly spreading it across the map. Or autonomously spreading it across the map. And as we see here, this is a very, very good cliff to abuse. Now, Kane makes some mistakes here. He allows all of his banelings to connect with ... Hellbats. It looked like he just A-moved into that and expected to win, which he's engaging off creep first of all, which is a big no-no. But you kind of do... Koss forced him to engage off of creep. Because Kane did... Ooh, good Widow Mine shot. Because Kane did... Or no, because Koss... Oh my god, I'm getting their names mixed up. Because Koss did force Kane to engage off of creep. Oh, that thought was really hard to say. Because he took a advantageous positioning that needed to be dealt with. He basically forced Kane into the fight, because otherwise Kane's base wouldn't be mining at all. I really don't like this battle at all. But he does clean up all the banelings, and that's important. Even though his army does get cleaned up. And I really hope Kane has baneling speed. I'm just going to assume he does because it's not on the production tab, even though I don't remember seeing it in that one fight. So, yeah, like he could have, if he had one Overseer, which he should have because he got hit by a Widow Mine over there, he would have been able to clear these up. Even using like one Overseer and using Changeling's position over here, you can spot this army coming ever so quickly, like a couple seconds earlier, heads up. That makes all the difference in the world. Actually, I think Kane... Did Kane actually forget baneling speed? No, he couldn't have. I swear he has baneling speed. Yeah, he does. Okay. But all these banelings, they're off creep, and oh my god, they just literally charge into all of the Hellbats. Like, so that was like 8 banelings for 2 Hellbats. That's not a good trade for the Zerg at all. And the supplies tell a big story about the difference in this game. Koss's army is doubling Kane's because he took some good engagements, and Kane's economy is just like, it's been shut down here. he's only mining on 3 bases. Koss is on 3 bases as well. And it's just, Kane, I don't know why you took this base, and then even by taking this base, didn't use your massive amount of queens early on to spread creep to where it actually mattered over here. Because if he had creep here, or even over here in this hallway, he would have been able to get a flank off or something. But all of his units went around a corner in just one big line, and it just got eaten up by some bad engagements with the banelings attacking the Hellbats and fighting off creep. But fighting off creep isn't as bad as just going straight into the Hellbats. That was very, very bad. So, yeah, this is pretty much the end of the game. Kane, I think if he made more Mutalisks, he would have been able to clean up this drop without engaging with his entire army like what he's doing now. But he never bothered. He doesn't appear to be a very Mutalisk favoring player. He did lose 11 Mutalisks already, which is a lot, but if he was able to, like, it would be, he would still be in an okay position if he was able to accumulate a large Mutaball, because then the Mutalisks would be able to snipe the Medvacs trying to drop units and abuse the ledge. But Kane wasn't able to do that, and ended up having to take some costly engagements. So, well, unfortunately for Kane, he's been eliminated by Koss. Koss is showing he's back at a good, strong, strong high level, even after he did, I believe, retire, and now he's back. So, good for him. Sucky for Kane. Maybe next time, maybe at MLG Anaheim, he'll be able to improve upon his game so that these silly mistakes won't go. These silly mistakes will not. I don't know. Just he won't make any more of these silly mistakes, so we won't have to watch those silly mistakes happen. It's like America's Top 10 Funniest Videos, kind of real. Like, you just see these mistakes that people make, and it's kind of funny, but it isn't, because this is also serious. So let's just hope Kane improves that. But also, good job to Koss for being able to go up against one of the top macro Zergs on North America and win pretty convincingly in both games in a best of 3 with a score of 2-0. Next VOD will be, I haven't decided what it'll be, but I'll label it on top for you guys to see what the games are and what I'm doing at my analysis desk for the Vasacast Invitational. Freelance, of course. Alright, stay